for you.
Well, that's why I wrote up
Additional material just came in about the
No,
parking.
you just do the. You want me to read it? I'll read it.
I'm going to bring them up.
Okay. Sure.
I saw they turned down my
It is an original.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah,
No problem. I got it.
You've heard enough.
It's just one right now.
okay, no, I understand.
No, I know you do.
I think I'm going to let her not have to.
No, we didn't get a chance to talk
I'll get
about
back to you
it.
tomorrow.
Well, I'm probably going to do more of that.
I got that one.
And Josh.
We lost one. We lost one.
You're lost in transition. Lost in translation.
Everyone is changed.
That's what everyone's saying. Yeah, that's what everyone's saying.
Here we go.
Welcome to March 12th meeting of Capitola City Council. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Harlan. Here. Councilmember Bottorff.
Here.
Councilmember Bertrand.
Here.
Councilmember Termini.
Here.
Mayor Norton.
Here. We all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Be led by Mike Banks.
Mike?
Mike.
Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good call.
Is Maddie Marlott in the audience? Maddie, please come forward.
Right there, you're perfect.
Thank you, Maddie, for joining us. Maddie Marlott sat on the Commission on the Environment for the last 3 years, and she is a high school student at Soquel High School, and will be graduating this year. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. She's also the daughter of Eric Marlott, who was our city planner for a number of years. So she's had a touch with the community, and she lives right behind the library and is very familiar with that area. And that was kind of her point of interest during her time on the Commission on the Environment. She was active in reporting graffiti removal in that area, but also in keeping that area of town under a watchful eye. I really appreciate that. And she's contributed to the Commission on the Environment in a number of ways, including the Climate Action Plan, which we are in the process of doing with the city, and also the plastic ordinance with the city, and the foam ordinance that went through the city that's passed. And so I'm sorry that you're going to move along, but I guess life changes in this area.
Life changes.
So I have this certificate of appreciation for you, Maddie, and we expect to see you framed on your wall. Would you like to say anything like that?
Sure.
Okay.
I'm really grateful for this opportunity. I learned a lot about city government and the environment, and special thanks to everyone on the commission. It's been a pleasure working with everyone, and I'll hope to visit soon. Thank you.
We have another presentation to do right now, and that's Rudy, would you come up here, please? And also Diane Cunningham, Gail Brock, and Mike Banks, please.
My vote's for the guy.
What'd you say next to the name?
That's the camera right over here, so if you want a side profile, stand sideways if you want.
Here we go.
Go, Mike!
Way to go, Jocks. You made it. This is appreciation plaques for police volunteers, for our volunteer police department, and many of the other participants are in the audience, which is good, showing their support for them. And I'm going to start with you, Diana. Okay. Diana was instrumental in making sure that juvenile diversion programs continue to be a success for the police department. She would meet every week at the first time at low levels of minor offenders, ensuring they completed their community service hours, completed their writing assignments, completed restitution, and while even trying to give them some mentoring direction. As a police volunteer, she worked many of the events in Capitola, hosted every year, and also volunteered significant time to the departments and substation in the Capitola Mall. It must be remembered, these volunteers, they work for almost every single one of the events that we have in the village, that were a contribution to not only to people who visit here, but also to people who live here. Gail, 13 years with the police volunteers, 2002 through 2015. Gail assisted many projects in the department, along with many events in Capitola. Gail spent the endless hours helping out in the program and evidence room. She would partner with Diana many times, using the police gem car to patrol for graffiti and abandoned vehicles. They also had such a wonderful smile and a great attitude, no matter where it was or what they were doing. True that is. Gail was also very active in the department's elder care and vacation watch programs as part of the department's neighborhood watch activities. Thank you, Gail. Mike? Mike, actually, Mike has been here since the beginning of this volunteer agency. And that's 19 years, Mike, is that correct?
No, sir, it's only 15.
You forgot about it. You missed the 4 years there.
I am, yes. That was the fun part.
Mike did background checks for the new volunteers and chaplains in the police department. As our longest tenure, how do you do a background check on chaplains?
Very carefully. Only God against
In privacy.
As our longest tenured volunteer, he was instrumental in the success of the department Safe Rides Home program. How many in the audience have taken the Safe Rides Home program?
Don?
Unusually, to reduce drunk driving in Capitola, Mike volunteered several hours at nearly every major event the police needed him for. He has been a major contributor to the Capitola Car Show since its inception. Mike continues to participate as a board member and a volunteer on the Capitola Safety Foundation, and has been the coordinator for their annual golf tournament that helps raise funds for numerous activities in the community and for the police department. Ready?
Mike, Gail, and Diana, on behalf of the police department, the city, and the community, we want to really thank you for all your efforts and all your contributions that you've given over the years. Appreciate it.
Thank you to you.
And to you.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Mr. Barasoni, can we have a report on closed session, please?
Yes. We had two items of labor negotiations in closed session concerning ongoing negotiations with the Police Officers Association and also with the unrepresented department heads, specifically the police chief. The council received reports from its negotiators but took no actionable action in closed session. That's the end of my report.
Thank you, Mr. Barasoni. Now is the time for oral communications. This will be a time in which the public can speak on any issue that is not on the agenda. If you have any issues that are not on the agenda, please step forward.
You gotta turn around, dude. Here. Oh, yeah. Oh, good boy. Good podium. Good
Sue,
podium.
fix the microphone for her, please.
Good evening, Mayor Norton, council members, and guests. My name is Veronica LZ, and I am currently serving as chair of the Pedestrian Safety Work Group, which is a subcommittee of the Regional Transportation Commission's Elderly and Disabled Transportation Advisory Committee. There goes half my 3 minutes right there. And I am here to, and we've put copies for you on your dais there, but I'm here to introduce you to and brag about our recently released brochure, which is called What Pedestrians and Motorists Want Each Other to Know. And there are really four main reasons that we decided to do this brochure. One was, of course, was to be to save lives and prevent injuries and accidents. Two, we wanted to improve relationships and understanding between pedestrians and motorists, kind of make it a friendlier community. Three, we wanted to help people kind of think before they acted, whether it was on a sidewalk or out in the street or driving on the road. And four, we wanted to help educate motorists of some of the needs and the behaviors of disabled pedestrians, given the committee that we serve with. So I thought I would just kind of highlight a couple of the things that we include in the brochure. And one is, of course, we have a lot of general things for everybody in here. So we remind the motorists that they are required to yield to pedestrians in intersections, whether it's a marked or unmarked crosswalk. We remind them that blind pedestrians have the right of way no matter what's going on. And we also remind pedestrians to know where you have the right-of-way, but make smart choices, because if there's a collision with a motor vehicle, you're going to be the loser. So everybody kind of has to pay attention to each other. We remind motorists things like watch for shorter pedestrians, watch for people in wheelchairs where they might have to go into the bike lanes because the sidewalk is blocked. And we explain, don't pass another car who might be stopped for pedestrians. We tell the pedestrians to be predictable and not to run out and dart between cars or come out from a place where they're not visible, because cars can't stop as fast as they think, and that they can outweigh most pedestrians by about 20 times. And we tell everybody to put down their electronic devices and explain all kinds of little goodies like that. And this brochure for everyone, you can get them from the RTC. We're going to be distributing them all over town. It's also available online at the RTC website, which is www.sccrtc.org, as in Santa Cruz County Regional Transportation Commission. So it's sccrtc.org/pedestrian/projects. These brochures, and online you can find it in English and in Spanish, and then there's also a text version there that helps people using screen readers. And you are all welcome to help link to this website if you want from your city website. Help us distribute it. Give us any ideas that you have. And if you'd like, we're happy to come back and have a further discussion on a future agenda and take any questions you might have. And have a nice time together out on the road. Thank you.
Veronica, thank you for joining us this evening. Can we get this brochure also placed in our public library and also City Hall? Thank you, Corinna. Thank you, Veronica.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. My name is Richard Lippy. I am the closest resident to the proposed skate park at Monterey Park, and I'd like to go on the record tonight saying that I am open to the possibility of some hard surface facility at Monterey Park that could be used by persons of all ages on devices that roll. That's my position. But I want to also go on record of saying that I'm opposed to this design by Dreamland Skate Parks dated 9/22/14, because as a construction professional looking at these drawings, I find them to be majorly flawed. And I think that I'm qualified enough to say that because in my career in construction, I've worked on 1,000-room Marriott Hotel as a contract manager. I've worked on hospital modernizations. I've worked in refinery, wharf modernizations, oil tanks, a new sewage treatment plant, water towers. And one of my last jobs was a consultant, general construction consultant, mechanical consultant for the Corps of Engineers on the Space Shuttle launch facility in Vandenberg Air Force Base. I think I'm qualified to look at these drawings. So I just want to go on record to say that these drawings are flawed. I see them flawed in an architectural way, in an engineering way, and in a planning way. But more than that, I'm one of 100 people in the same similar feeling of being opposed. And we're trying to track everything that's happening, that will be happening with this skate park. And I'm going online, and I just want to let you know that going online is a real chore, trying to track things down. And I have one example here. I've got 1 minute, and I think I can do it easily. I was interested in the Architectural and Site Review Committee and how they operated, so I tracked the first one here, and there was a notice of cancellation for the February 25th, and the new one would be on the 11th. And I announced this to people that would be interested. Come to the March 11th meeting, and then the morning of March 11th, I see that there's nothing on the website for the Architectural Site Review Board. I called City Hall at 9:30, and they verified that there was nothing on the website, but in fact there was an agenda. I went to the meeting. The meeting did not start at 3:30. The meeting was not in the City Hall Council chambers. A meeting started at 3:45. This is the agenda that was not posted on the website. I received it at the meeting. This is a staff report that was given to me at the meeting. It was not posted on the website or in the hall over here. And we need better tracking so that interested parties can track the skate park. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Mayor Norton and council members, I'm also here to talk about the skate park, and I have some issues with the whole process. This started with Mayor Norton.
Please give us your name so we can
Oh,
get
I'm
the record.
sorry,
Thank you.
Marilyn Warder.
Thank you,
I wrote
Marilyn.
it down here.
Thank you very much.
Guess you didn't see that. And my problem was we met on the grassy knoll back in 2012, and we were told at that time that you were considering a 2,000 square foot kiddie park, and so the neighbors didn't get upset about it, because I don't think any of us really have an issue with something that small that attracts little kids, that little inline skaters can use and young skateboarders can use, and it wouldn't attract a huge following, so it wouldn't have that much traffic. So, you know, the door got opened. And then when that door got opened, we were shocked and appalled when we came to the meeting and saw this 9,000 square foot skate park. And so we protested that, we voiced our opinions, and we were thrilled when you moved it to McGregor, where there was no neighbors to have a problem. And you've mentioned before that you've tried and tried to get this in neighborhoods, and you haven't been able to because of neighborhood opposition. I kind of feel like you learned from those neighbors and you used that against us, because I think that after that happened, two ladies with a rich uncle were coached on how to get this in that neighborhood where they wanted it. And I think you guys helped them. And I don't think that's right. I think you're supposed to be representing the whole community, not just a couple of people. And they're trying to put something in our neighborhood that will diminish the quality of our life for their personal convenience. I mean, they have this money. They could use this to make McGregor better. They could use it to make access to McGregor safer for everyone, for the people who are going to use the dog park and the bicyclists. That could all be done. And I still have my I Like Mike sticker that I got from you at Gales when you told me that they were using your name when they really shouldn't be, that you were not behind the skate park, and that you would not vote for it if the immediate neighborhood was opposed. And I could tell when you made that vote that you were torn. And I feel like, you know, you went with your neighbors instead of the neighborhood that is really going to be impacted by this. And I'm disappointed in you guys. I really am.
And you will have a public process on this, you know that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Matt Arthur, thank you, and in rebuttal to the skate park, thank you for allowing the public process. That's what we need. It's an idea, and it's a great way to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Anyone else in the public like to address the council? If no, staff? Any issue? Council.
Yes. On the 20th of March, there'll be an art walk from 5:30 to 8:30 at the Capitola Mall. It's free. It's called Third Friday, and it's going to be a regular thing. And all the artists displaying are public, local artists. Also, on 3/21, the museum will have its postcard exhibit. The installation celebration. There'll be cake and punch and all those good museum things. You'll love it. It's a beautiful exhibit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else like to Is she, Stephanie?
Chamber Community Awards, Thursday the 19th, 6 to 9 p.m. Local heroes in our community. It's a lot of fun. They usually have a lunch, but they're going to do a dinner this year. And everyone's invited. It's open to the public. So if any of you would like to come to the Chamber Annual Awards Dinner to see very deserved people getting awards, contact the Chamber of Commerce. It'll be fun.
John? Okay, we move the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda will be enacted in one motion, the form listed below. There will be no separate discussion on these items prior to the time the council votes the action unless members of the public or the city council request specific items to be discussed for separate review. Is there any member of the public that would like to pull any of the items on the consent agenda? There's actually 5 items on here tonight. Please step forward.
Richard Lippy, I'm not looking at it, but item A is the approval of the February 11 minutes. Is that correct? Okay, I was told today that there's no approval needed because it already was approved February 26th, and I listened to the video, and I can go along with that. It did seem that I made comments or suggestions for inclusion. The council said, yes, those sound good and reasonable, and then a vote was taken, I think, to approve the minutes as amended. The problem I have is that it wasn't amended with the words that I used. I was asking for the minutes to reflect...
Richard, can I interrupt you just
Yes.
for a second? What we'll do now is I'm going to take item 8 since you're up here.
Okay.
Everyone wants to pull it. And whatever you are saying now in this public forum, it will be recorded and put into the minutes. Not in the previous minutes, but in the minutes for tonight. Okay? So you're
But we can correct the minutes tonight if there's something
no,
that's incorrect
those
in the
minutes, yeah, you're correct. Those minutes have already been voted on in the previous meeting. We can't change those minutes, but what we can do is whatever comments that you're making this evening, they will be included in the minutes for this meeting this evening.
Okay.
Okay?
We've approved those?
All right. I asked that we include a comment to the effect, all costs incurred by the city shall be paid by the developer. And if you go to the video on February 11th, time mark roughly 33 minutes, Jamie Goldstein, the city manager, said, we will be reimbursed for all costs. We will be reimbursed for all costs. I also asked for Mr. Tamini summarization of the sentiment of the area, and I said specifically nearly 95% of the neighbors bordering the park and almost 80% of the neighbors within 1 block from the place. The amended minutes say that there was a majority of opposition in the neighborhood, but I don't think that's as significant as the figures. Those are the 2 items that I have, and just one other thing related to this is that the regular meeting action summary that was posted on the website for February 11th is no longer available, and I'd like to make it available. There's a link for the regular meeting action summary, but when I click on it, I get the amended minutes, and I would like to see the original regular meeting action summary for February 11th. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Is there anyone else in the public who would like to pull any of the items on the consent agenda?
I'll move consent.
Second.
The motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. We move to general government public hearings. Item A is consider rescinding resolution number 3954, establishing a parking time limit within the designated parking meter zones by increasing Zone A village area from 2 hours to 3 hours. Staff report, please.
Excuse me. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a little background. Currently, the parking in the zones where we have parking meters are established by resolution. The existing time limits established by resolution 3954 are as follows. In Zone A1, which is the village, is 2 hours. In Zone A2, which is Cliff Drive going up west of the village is 4 hours on the cliff side and 12 hours on the railroad side. And Zone B, which is the beach and village parking lots behind City Hall here, is 12 hours. Just to give you the maps that show this, this is Zone A1 in the village. It extends all the way up to City Hall here and includes the spots in front of the wharf and then the main village area. It does go up Monterey Avenue. There's no parking meters of except for about a block up Monterey, but the zone continues up there. Zone A2, as you can see, is Cliff Drive. Zone B is the entire, formerly known as Pacific Cove property, now known as Beach and Village parking lots 1 and 2. In general, tonight we are considering changes to the Zone A1 village to 3 hours. If the council does choose to change the time limits, it will require reprogramming of the pay stations and the parking meters in the area and putting in new signage that currently says all 2 hours on it. We estimate that will take about 60 days to get the signs made and the programming done. And I think they estimate the cost probably a couple $1,000s to do that work. Staff is recommending that we only try this on a trial basis if we want to. The reason for that is it may be difficult to reverse if we make it permanent. There's issues that we're concerned about, so we would recommend, our recommendation would be tried from May 1st through Thanksgiving, and then it would revert as we come out of the holiday closure when we bag all the meters back to 2 hours, at which time we could come back again, or we could come up before then if we want to continue the 3 hours and make it permanent at that time. So our recommendations tonight is to conduct a hearing and consider the draft resolution, and provide direction to staff. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Steve. Any questions of staff?
Yeah. So, Steve, if we decide to go backwards, back to, let's say if we went 3 hours and then went back to 2 hours, how would we determine that we should actually go back to 2 hours? What procedure involving the public would we use to do that?
You know, if the council wants, and if we don't do anything, if we adopt it as it's written right now, as we come out of Thanksgiving, we would revert to 2 hours. But we could hold another public hearing. Council could schedule another public hearing at the end of end of the summer. We can make a decision at that time. If we decide if we want to make it permanent or not.
Okay, so we basically decide, the council would decide.
Yes.
But how about reaching out to the public to find out what the results of this experiment is?
We can engage the public, and we've interfaced with the Traffic and Parking Commission. They've made a recommendation on this already. We could work through them and work through the BIA and the CVRA. Probably are the three main entities I'd want to reach out to, and we could certainly do that.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, really quick, I do have a couple of slides I forgot to show you.
Sure.
Can you document camera? I wanted to, if we can get this thing to work.
I don't know exactly.
Maybe we can.
I think it's here.
Sorry. It's on my end.
It's on your end, not my end.
All right. Now what?
Two flicks, come on.
All right, well, maybe I'll just read it into,
There you go.
this is the number of 2-hour tickets we wrote in 2014 from April through September. Just to read the numbers, 306 in April, 320 in May, 387 in June, 283 in July, 303 in August, and then it goes down to 107 in September. And then looking at 2013 versus 2014. In 2013, which is the blue on this, we issued 1,892 2-hour tickets. In 2014, that went down by 186 to 1,706. So I just wanted to share those numbers with you.
Thank you. Questions, staff?
One more question.
Were we at full staffing then? Because I know that in the past, we'd been down on code enforcement officers, and so the numbers were down because we were understaffed. So I'm not sure if that's reflected in these numbers at all.
Getting signals from the chief. I think we were at full staff. There may be some periods where we weren't, but generally speaking, we were at full
Those
staff,
are pretty
yes.
pretty accurate.
Yes.
Steve, when did the second lot open?
Second lot opened during weekends in early May and full-time on Memorial Day. Or Memorial Day weekend. So that would have been in May, end of May.
Okay. We'll open this to the public. Anyone who would like to address the council on this issue, please step forward.
I'm going to let my pal go first.
I'll flip you forward.
Good evening, Mayor Norton and council members. My name is Molly Ording, and I'm a resident of Capitola as well as a member of the Capitola Parking and Traffic Commission and the Capitola Village Residents Association. I know you've heard from me in detail of late as to my many reasons for being in favor of the temporary trial of the 3-hour limit on the pay stations in the village as outlined in Steve's staff report. This issue has been discussed and rediscussed for several years now, and with the second season of our new parking lot approaching and the rerouted shuttle service in place, it seems that it is finally time to try this change out and devise some way of quantifying the outcome after the trial period. As a resident, and as I've heard Jamie say, I love this expression, I have less skin in the game than village merchants. But I think we all stand to benefit from even a small reduction in pollution and noise within our beautiful and precious coastal environment, as well as the increased safety for pedestrians, bicyclists, and motorists using the village. I and many others who've discussed this trial change, merchants, neighbors, shoppers, beachgoers, restaurant and happy hour patrons, dog walkers, all agree that the 2-hour limit is oftentimes a deterrent for them to visit and spend enough time and enough money to enjoy all that Capitola has to offer. I'm in favor of this change for all the reasons that you're well aware of. Reduction in traffic, noise, congestion, and emissions generated from all the cars driving round and round, jockeying for parking spots, as well as the large upside potential for a more pleasant, less hectic experience for shoppers, diners, visitors, and residents who come to enjoy Capitola. These are, in fact, the very same reasons that you agreed upon when you raised the parking limit to 3 hours during this past holiday season. I understand that changing the limit in the neighborhoods adjacent to the village may be a negative for some residents living in those neighborhoods. Perhaps just changing the pay stations in the village proper and leaving the adjacent primarily residential streets with the 2-hour limit could be a solution to that. Also, if the potential of reduced revenue from either the pay stations or the tickets generated is an issue of concern, I also offer the possibility of charging $1 more for the 3rd hour. One of the great benefits of our pay stations is that a very large percentage of users will simply just hit the maximum time without actually using all this time, which in turn yields greater revenue to the city. A 3rd more expensive hour would possibly offset any potential revenue loss for the city if, in fact, that is an issue of concern. In any case, I strongly encourage you to give this recommendation a good and measurable trial. This change will provide all who live, work, and visit Capitola increased enjoyment, increased business, and along with decreased traffic and congestion. Let's just try it, as they say at Nike. Thanks a lot.
Mr. Mayor, could I ask Molly a question? Molly, we have a letter from the Traffic and Parking Commission saying there was a unanimous vote to leave it at 2 hours.
That was in 2013?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that,
I just want to get some clarification, because...
yeah, so it was 2 years ago, and the new parking lot had not come into creation at that point. And I've discussed that decision and discussion in both of the letters that I wrote to you. And I think that for me, and for perhaps others on the Parking and Traffic Commission, if we were to revisit the issue today, there might be increased perspectives, changed perspectives on the issue. At least as far as a trial, I think what we were considering was a permanent change at that point.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Molly Orty.
Thank you.
Good evening, Karen Hanna. I'm on the traffic committee, and also I've got skin in the game. I really actually don't know what that means. But anyway, okay, I don't know on what planet having 3-hour parking with less turnover is going to reduce traffic. I hate to say that. But one of the main reasons that the traffic committee was in favor of retaining the 2 hours is that it would drive people up to the parking lots, which is what we really want them to do, because I see my comment from visitors, we don't get an enormous amount of negatives about the 2 hour occasionally, and they seem to understand they have to move their car, and we take that opportunity to then give them the map that the BIA has printed 15,000 of, which shows them where all the different parking sections are. They're color-coded, they have the price per hour on it, and we pass out a lot of those, and we gave some to the police department so that they could put them in with the citations, so that people would see where they can park longer the next time they come if they do get a citation, which I really think that one of the things that we've all talked about is education. If we can just make people understand that the parking is cheap up there, you can park for a long time, you just have to walk down, on weekends there's a shuttle, and this little map that we've produced, it has where the restrooms are, it has where the shuttle stops are, it has a lot of information on it, and the BIA has printed 15,000 of those. We give them out in our stores, and we have ask the code enforcement to also give them out with any citations, and the hope was that we could also print one, and Steve and I have talked about it, we haven't really gotten there yet, that could go on the pay stations, like on the back of the pay station, so people could walk up there and then they say, oh, long-term parking, and they would use it. I think that a lot of the people that regularly use the beach know that it's 2 hours. I'm going to park up in the parking lot because I want to stay more than 2 hours. But if they think they have a chance to get a 3-hour parking place, they're going to start driving through the village. So the exact same number of people, or possibly more, are going to drive through the village because they want one of those 3-hour parking places, or a 2-hour. Half of them don't know what they're going to get when they find that parking place. But the people who knew that if they wanted to stay more than 2 hours, they had to park up in that parking lot, they might stop trying that parking lot, and they might start coming down below. So I do think that the whole dream of suddenly, because there's 3-hour parking, nobody's going to cruise the village, it's absurd. It's not living in the real world. But, and I think at first, I used to think having the 3rd hour available on, like, just along the Esplanade, only on those parking places, would be an interesting experiment. Now that we have the kind of parking banks that we have, I think a lot of us and I love parking banks, so I'm not being critical, but ours are not the easiest to figure out. That little tiny screen has got like 8 million words on it. And if we add one more word that says, oh, and by the way, your 3rd hour is going to cost you $2.50, all those people who have been pushing max time are going to go ballistic. So all I say is, put your complaint hat on, because the city's going to hear about it when all of a sudden their tickets are a lot more expensive. So, and one just other quick thing, I know my time's up, but I didn't put this in any of the letters. We didn't have it in the recommendation because it sometimes brings up some negativity about the business people. But if we have 3-hour parking down there, you will see more employees and business owners parking in those zones and taking up space. Because as much as I talk to them about it, sometimes you just can't get some people to stop. And when you start looking at how long they can park there, and then they know when somebody might be coming on, or, you know, and they can stretch that out, and we'll lose parking places, you'll lose revenue. That's not as big a concern to me, but I think the turnover does give you a lot of really revenue that doesn't make people unhappy. If they put their money in and they leave early, they don't even think about that money that they're not spending. So it's different from a citation. So that quick turnover that gets the city a little extra money, I think, is pretty benign. Thank you.
Karin? Bring your skin back. Okay. Am I correct in assuming that the letter we received on March 10th from the BIA, is it pretty much the feeling of the merchants? And I know you can't speak for every single merchant, but is there generally a feeling that 2 hours?
Yes. I mean, you know, at any given moment, I could produce signatures of 10,000 people who want it to be 3 hours. Everybody who's on the beach and sitting in a restaurant would love it to be longer. When you talk to the business people, a lot of times at first they're like, yeah, we want the 3 hours. We want people to really be able to stay a long time. And then you start bringing up some of the practicalities of it, the turnover, the beach people that, you know, we love the beach people, but, you know, sometimes it's hard for somebody who wants to shop to find a parking place in the summer. Let's just put it that way. So having more opportunity for turnover, and once you start explaining, and even the residents, some of the residents who live down there who at first thought, you know, well, yeah, sure, 3 hours is great, and then they were all of a sudden like, I can't find a parking place now. What's going to happen when people are staying there for, you know, 3 hours and I have to wait for that turnover? So I think the people that we've actually had some interaction with and sort of had a discussion about it, I think off the top of people's heads, most people say it's a good idea. But I think when they really start looking at the layers involved, you know, a lot of them change their mind.
Okay.
So we don't really have a way to get a vote, and it's just like any other vote for president. Not everybody will vote. If we send out an email, please give us your response. We send out 170 emails, we get, you know, 60 back, you know, that kind of thing. But I do believe it's clearly it was unanimous on the board, and the board represents short-term rentals, lodging, restaurants, offices, and business and retail. So it's across the board. And we did poll the entire board, and they all unanimously thought it should stay at 2.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anything else?
Thank you, Karin.
Okay, thanks.
Matt Arthur, I do have skin in the game. I have great respect for Karin. It's because you're a merchant. That's why you have skin in the game. Yeah. I talked a little bit about this today and to a few other people too. I myself, I'm down in the village quite a bit, and we get to field a lot of people who a lot of times like to complain about the parking. Oh, I got a ticket. Well, for their own lack of knowledge or perception, they don't keep an eye on their meters, they stay too long, all that. There's that perception of Capitola enforces things way too much, there's all this, they don't like to come down here anymore. I thought that, I do agree with the turnover thing to an extent, but I do believe that if you do have people in the village, you can get them into the village. Adding an extra hour is not that big of a deal. You're going to have people, you're going to bring people into the village, you're putting your best foot forward. As a city, we can say, hey, you know what, all right, so we feel the complaints and now we're going to do something about it. Hey, we're going to offer you an extra hour. Thank you for coming down here. You're still going to have to pay for it, but you're going to get an extra hour. You have time to now park, get your ticket, go have a meal, and then spend some time actually shopping. I think if you can get people into the village and keep them in the village, they have more opportunity, more time to spend in the village and spend more money. I mean, I really do. Traffic down there, you're always going to have traffic. The only way you're going to get rid of traffic is get rid of the beach. Everybody wants to go down there. They want to find that spot. They're going to take a tour through the village first to see if they can get that spot. A lot of people know about the parking lots. We tell people about it. Some people prefer it, but it's something. It's the allure of the village to park at the closest spot, close to the beach, to see. I mean, I don't know too many places where you can get that close to the beach. That's what people want. That's what they come down here for. So if they get that spot, allow them that hour. Allow them the joy of having that spot. Go get something to eat. Go shopping. Go spend the money. I think it's a great idea. That I think the time's here to be able to at least attempt it, give it a shot, see how it goes. You can't quantify anything in the end, but you can quantify complaints and all that stuff. I think it's a good idea to at least try it. So it's my opinion.
Thank you, Matt. Is there anyone else who'd like to address the council? Please step forward. Being none, we return to council for discussion. Want to start?
I'll start?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm going to start since I spent a little time in the parking traffic. Couple concerns. I've got 3 groups, CVRA, BIA, Parking and Traffic Commission, that all don't want it. So I have to take a lot of consideration for that. When I was on the Parking and Traffic Commission, we did talk about this, and there was the point made about if we did go to 3 hours, it would be at an additional cost. Whether somebody pays attention to that, I don't know. I do have trouble with the concept that by increasing the parking, we're going to do more for pollution. I think it's going to make it worse because people are going to continue to circulate. And if there is less turnover, we're not going to do any better. What I think when I look back on us approving that temporary parking structure, the temporary parking lot, the concept was we were going to evaluate that, and we always seem to get ourselves in a position where we're not evaluating it. Okay, we're always ready to make a change, and we want to change the parking time here. I think we did 1 year, with the statistics you had, Steve, 1 year of evaluation of the tickets. And what I see is the tickets went down once we opened up the new parking lot, which means, in my mind, I want to believe positively that people are making an effort to go park in the 12-hour parking zones, which is where we want them to be. We want to encourage that. So I don't know where this initiative came from to make this change. For me, I would rather, at the most, I would want to wait another year, evaluate another year and see if that chart continues to go down, to see if if our plan for getting people, encouraging people to park in the 12-hour parking and using the shuttle is working, or if it's just careless people doing that. I'm not excited about paying $2,000 to change them temporarily and then paying $2,000 to change them back. Maybe not the signs, we would save on the sign money. I'm just not feeling like this is a good move at this time. I remember us saying we were going to test this parking lot. I'd like to at least do it for another year to test and see that works. So at this time, I'm not ready to approve this or make a motion to approve this recommendation. And like I said, if it came back in a year from now and we did further evaluation, I'd be more receptive to listening to it.
Ed, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Did you get correspondence from the CVRA that I didn't get? I didn't get anything that they disapproved of this.
I did.
Yeah,
Well,
they
they
said-
they had pros and
Pros and
cons.
cons. They didn't say they disapproved of it.
Well, the letter that I got, it appeared that the CVRA was against it. The BIA was against it. Now, the only thing about the BIA has definitely said they're not in favor of it, as was represented tonight. To my recollection, the CVRA said it was, at best, against it. And the third part was the parking and traffic. And that's the other thing is here we are. The letter from the parking and traffic was 2 years old. I called my representative in the Parking and Traffic Commission. Have you guys talked about this? He goes, no, we haven't talked about it. So this is another reason I'd like to kick it back is, I think, Molly, you said, we haven't talked about it. And I think you said, if we took it back and talked about it, it might be a different letter. So I'm saying, well, why don't you take it back and talk about it? Get the current people that are there. Let's go ahead and evaluate it for another summer. And if we come back and Parking Traffic has a different opinion and CVRA can decide to get all on the same page and it comes back, I would be open to listen to it. But right now, with the information I have, I don't see the need for it.
Okay.
And can I just make one correction? Do you want me to come up with about the CVRA letter? There was no...
Just to come to
You
the
gotta come
microphone.
up.
To the microphone, sure. Come on up.
Thank you, Molly.
Sorry. There was no letter from the CVRA opposing this. The CVRA generally doesn't take positions on things thus far. What they did is send out an announcement of this, the public hearing, and just said, if you have an opinion on the issue, write back. But there was no letter from them. I
There was a letter.
Oh, there was a
I'm
letter.
looking at it.
Oh, it was to the
And
council.
Yeah, to the council, and it gives the pros and the cons, depending on who in the CVRA spoke about it.
Exactly.
But it's pretty
Oh,
balanced, you know,
Yeah.
it's basically a correspondence letting us know the discussion that took place and
So
what
the
what
results-
points were brought up. They didn't come out in a position one way or the other, but they were very clear and very even-handed
Okay.
with their comments.
So was it an email to the council?
It was an email from Margaret and Rich.
Yeah.
Yeah. History. I actually,
Okay,
Vice President, I didn't see it either.
okay.
Excuse me, Ed.
That's all right. You know, I think that, as Karen mentioned, you know, she was not willing to speak entirely for the BIA. You know, she gave a position that she had with the members she talked to. I've gone and talked to a few members in the business community. You know, it's like talking on any number of issues we talk in this town. You're going to get a mixed vote. The only one that I believe was unanimous was the Parking and Traffic Commission. However, it was 2 years old at best.
Mr. Mayor, can I address the Traffic and Parking Commission recommendation? It is 2 years old, and it was when the final vote came in, it was a unanimous vote, but there was, I think, 3 meetings of discussion on that issue, and, you know, very much dissenting opinions, and so, you know, when it came to the final vote, they decided to vote as a group and support it as a group, but there was a lot of discussion back and forth, and there were certain people I would, if we polled them individually, voted to, you know, vote as a unanimous block, but did not necessarily support it. So I just want to make sure we're, you know, that they didn't all come together and say, yes, we like it, but they did vote as a block to support it. We could certainly bring it back to them. Now, the biggest change is we have the second parking lot now. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Michael, you want to go?
Sure. You know, I was sort of in favor of looking at this because we all field a lot of the emails and phone calls from people who come to stay here, and they have lunch, shop, get a ticket. 2 hours just wasn't enough, and I said, well, gee, 2 hours, or making it 3 hours is going to be beneficial to the merchants, and merchants I've spoken to seem to feel that way, and yet I'm hearing from the BIA that maybe not so much after they take everything into consideration. Plus parking and traffic. The CVRA give beachgoers more time near the beach, give people coming to visit residents more time, make it more difficult to use village resident permits because people will be there for 3 hours. That was a con. Pack Cove parking spaces less desirable because they have 3 hours on the beach now. Encourage faster turnover for merchants with the 2 hours. Encourage people to eat at Capitola restaurants for the 3 hours. So, you know, we can go both ways. I feel a little deflated. And by the way, 100 tickets a week, really? That's a lot of...
Is it a month or a week?
400 in 1 month. So I'm a little deflated because I was trying to do this for the village merchants to give people more time to be there, and yet I'm hearing that maybe not so much the village merchants. So I'm kind of leaning towards leaving it alone. But that's just my opinion of the moment. It may change. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Spent the last 2 days plus talking to merchants and some visitors. So I'll just read some of the comments. Some reflective of what the public testimony is. Basically, more time to look around. Consistent complaints from customers to merchants that it's a hassle to get a new spot after 2 hours. One merchant suggested that maybe the turnaround may actually not be less. You're seeing the people basically trying to find their parking spot again. One merchant at a bar said that, as you might expect, make people more happy. They'll be able to stay longer, which is something they want, which obviously is good for business. One merchant at a hotel said, how would it not work? 2 hours go by really fast. You only have time to do one thing. Get some food, maybe do a little shopping. One merchant at a food venue said, it's going to make the city more touristy. You're going to have more time to enjoy Capitola. These are people that supported the shift to 3 hours as an experiment. It's easier to understand 3 hours rather than 2 hours. 2 hours goes by real fast. People feel, these are quotes, people feel constricted with only 2 hours. One merchant just looked at me straight in the face and said, if you want customers to spend money here, don't give them a chance to leave. And then actually, this person gave me a couple examples that were customers that spent the time on their 2 hours to choose clothing. This is a clothing store. Choose clothing items, and then had to run out to change their parking spot, and then after circling around for a while, they couldn't find one, and they phoned in saying, "Don't hold those clothes for me." The same merchant said that they were going to buy 2 items, and they went out to move the car, and they just got a ticket. After they came back, they only bought 1 item because that was their budget. Many people just said, basically, of course they like it. One person was pretty adamant about the fact that this is alienating our visitors. This is making a less friendly place for Capitola. Yes, we all know that when we sign up for the when we sign up for the spot, it's 2 hours, but if you're truly enjoying Capitola, which many of us do, you get engrossed in what you're doing, the store is attractive, maybe it took too long to get seated in the restaurant, and there goes your 2 hours. One person just looked at me and said, all I hear is meter, 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 meter. That's all I hear. Constant complaints about the meters. Another complaint was there's just not enough time to go to the restaurant, have a relaxing meal, and go out to do some shopping. Yes, I could come to Capitola and get something to eat if I could get seated. Yes, I could come to Capitola and maybe have enough time to purchase something in the store, but I can't do a lot of multiple things. It's not an overall experience. There were some people that were truly conflicted. About 3 people. I think there were members of the BIA and go to the normal meetings, and I would sit down and listen to the pros and cons. And in many cases, after I listened to the pros and cons, they said, well, why not do an experiment? You'll never know. And that's what one merchant said at a bar. He said, why not do it? Because we'll never know unless we try it. So basically, I think it comes down to use. Some people come to town for certain reasons, whether it's a store or a restaurant or the beach. And of the many people that come here, they have sort of a certain time element. And we can't predict how many people are going to be for a restaurant or how many people are going to come here to spend the time to find the perfect bathing suit or the perfect skirt or what. If we have 3 hours, we give those people the time to do what they came here for. And also make Capitola a much more friendly place. Thank you.
Well, as you all know, we have a conflict between being a beach town, everybody wants to go to the beach, and people wanting to go to a restaurant or get ice cream or, do other things, just do other things in the village and so forth. So we have this mixed use and a mixed need for parking, and some short-term and some long-term. And the only problem with the 3 hours that I have is that the beachgoers are going to be there, employees may be there. We may not get the turnover that you want. Absolutely, we need 3 hours, and that's why we put long-term parking up here. But we have these 2 users. I don't know if we're ever going to make everybody happy. Probably not. We're never going to make everyone happy. But I think it's working okay right now, and I'm willing to let it continue for a while. I'm intrigued with, trying something new. But, you know, there is a need for turnover down there. There's also a need for long-term. And the people that are going long-term have to figure out their needs and find a place that fits them and allow space for shorter term, because we do have those two needs. And it's always going to be that way. And it is frustrating. I'm concerned also about, you know, having something and then changing it. We get so many people that can't, you know, are having a hard time figuring out what our parking system is. And so I'm concerned with, well, this time of the year, you know, it's this, and this time of the year, it's, you know, something else, or having them have to read it. I don't like those meters either. I see people up there all the time, you know, reading it and looking at it, and gee, I just want to take out some money and give it to them, you know, to help them out, you know, or something, or because it is, I just hope they work out. I hope that they work out and we make money off of them, because that was the whole point of them, rather than have the old ones and have the meter, the coin collector, you know, I'm still not convinced about these. But I think just based on the history of where we've been and what we've done down there and so forth, with the new lot, I say let's just try it for another season, see how it works out. Jacques, I really like the fact that you interviewed a lot of people and talked to a lot of people. I think we need to continue to do that and identify the needs and try to meet those needs the best we can. And for the short-term people, we've got it. For the long-term people, we've got it. We just need to educate them. Educate. There's parking places there. Go there. And so we can have people come to Capitola and have a good experience and not a frustrating experience by getting tickets. And hopefully we can work on having a great season this year with Easter and Easter Bunny and Easter eggs and spring breaks and summer and so forth, and we'll have everything in shape and the sidewalks clean and plenty of trash cans out there, and continue to monitor things, I think, to see what the needs of the village are, happy to look forward to listening to the recommendations of the village committee. They're there every day to see what works and doesn't work. So that's it for now.
Thank you, Stephanie. The village really needs to be a user-friendly environment, and we haven't achieved that. And that's why one of the reasons locals don't go down there during the summertime. They may visit in the wintertime. I do. But I avoid going in the summertime. And as you all know, that my feeling is that we should have no cars at all in the village. But that may not come in my lifetime, but it's a thought. And if you go to a restaurant in the village, and everyone's experienced this, it'll take you an hour and a half to eat, to park, get your thing and eat. That leaves you absolutely no time to shop. And so I'm a little confused by merchants, Karen, who have retail businesses, and they see that is a fact, that they would not be in favor of allowing a long enough time to, after you've eaten your meal, to walk around the village and spend money. It seems to me that it's an economic generator by going to 3 hours. It doesn't affect the city. You still get the full parking meter feed, whether it's 2 hours or 3 hours. Somebody's pulling out or pulling in. It's no difference in income. Our management of the system becomes less because we have hopefully 1,800 less parking tickets to give out each year. That's no benefit to anyone. Every person that gets that parking ticket during the year probably is not coming back. You've lost that customer to the village. And as to staff and to this council, our biggest complaint is parking tickets. Is that good community relations with our public? No, it's not good community relations. It's not good. The village belongs to this community. The parking down there belongs to this community. We share it with the merchants, we share it with the people who live down there, and it's maintained by the city and paid for by everyone. And so, as a community environment, which everybody in this town identifies with, I'm a little embarrassed that we can't make it more user-friendly than it is. And one way to do that is to give people an opportunity to spend a bit of leisurable time down in that village and not be run out of there within 2 hours. 2 hours is not enough time for anyone to properly shop down in that village. And so I'm going to support this motion as suggested by staff, where we do it on a temporary basis. We take a look at it, we'll see it, it'll cost us a little bit to change the meters, but we can get a good read of whether this economically works for merchants, but also works as an environment where we reduce the amount of complaints that we get out of that village. And it's significant. It's not small. And Steve showed you that with the number of parking tickets that we get. 400 in 1 month is absurd. That's just that's a figure that you're not going to get those people back. So I'm going to support this motion. I'll entertain any motion someone would like to make at this point.
I'll make one.
Michael?
First of all, are we enabling the forgetful by going from 2 to 3 hours? Are we enabling the forgetful? Because that's basically, when you get right down to it, we are, trying to cater to people who don't pay attention, even though there's 400 in 1 month. If that's what we want to do, we need to stop enforcing 2 hours completely and just enforce, time limit, time out on the meter. I don't think that's the way. I don't think there's going to be a lot of support in doing a split season where in the hot season it's 2 hours and in the off season it's 3. Too confusing, too crazy. I don't see any smiles at all. That's not going to be the motion. I think that, first of all, instructions on the pay station, I think we've been going about it the wrong way. The instructions are put on there by manufacturers and help with, from the police department. I think we need someone with a really heavy IT background to maybe come up with some succinct instructions. Every time somebody walks up to it, it's like the SATs. I see people studying. These are intelligent people studying that screen. Can't figure it out. I don't know why. So I'm going to make the motion that we try this between now and Thanksgiving. And Jacques really sold me on it. He goes, we're never going to know until we try. An 8-month trial is not going to be the worst thing that could ever happen. We can always go back. So my motion is, staff recommendation, try this till Thanksgiving, see how it works.
Second.
Got a motion and a second on the floor.
Just further comments. You can't say that there's not 3-hour parking. We've got tons of 3-hour parking. We have tons of long-term parking around. People just have to walk to the village. We are providing long-term parking for people that want to shop and eat. So we are meeting that need. Now, maybe it's not right there in front of the restaurant. It's not 3 hours there. That's life in the beach in the village area. That's life in coastal California. And that's why I think we need to be really careful with this. And you're going to see some of those 3-hour spots, and those people are on the beach. And they're not shopping. They're not buying things. So, there goes that. So it would be really interesting to analyze this afterwards to see whether it does.
We need some data at the end of this, though. I mean, really good data to come back in November and say, oh, did we do the right thing? Did we not?
And the 400 number I don't know about, but the 300 number, my first reaction was, is that all? If I think of the 300, that's 10 a day. That's 10 in a 24-hour period. That is not that shocking, or I'm not that amazed by that to say, oh my God, look at 10 tickets a day is turning off the public to our town. No, a couple, I don't know how many people a day are, but 10 tickets in a 24, 15 tickets in a 24-hour, doesn't seem like that many. And was that just the village, or was that
Just
outside of the area too?
Anywhere in the 2-hour area, 2-hour limit.
Josh?
One of the first times I came to Capitola, I went to French restaurant, and it's no longer there. The building was remodeled and everything. I stayed longer than I should have. I bought a bottle of wine. My wife and I actually had a babysitter that night. It was a great meal, except for when I got out to the car, had a ticket. And I swore I wasn't going to come back again, and here I am. People say that some of the parkers that are going to take advantage of the 3-hour spots are going to be on the beach. Yeah, it's one of the things I love about Capitola. I'm glad there's going to be people on the beach. They're going to come back because they had a good time. They enjoyed having their kids dig holes to China, and they enjoyed the whole hassle of cleaning out the car when they got home, but they had a good time being here. So I don't mind. In talking with the people, I agree with Ed. This parking lot, the new parking lot, hopefully to be a park, is working. I mean, it's been gradually getting better. So I think we're going to achieve a new balance. But I think that balance is going to mean not only more people at the new parking lot, but also a lot fewer tickets, which will mean happier people who visit Capitola.
Well, it's true we want people on the beach, but we want them to park in other parking places, to go to the beach, long-term parking places, to go to the beach for a half a day and stop at the museum and not just run back to their car.
True. We have a motion second on the floor. Let's do
Mr. Mayor,
roll
Mr.
call
Mayor,
vote.
before you vote, may I make a change? I assume you're going to adopt the resolution that's before you, or that's the motion. I'd actually like to make a change to it. Zone B on there is identified as the Pacific Cove parking lot. We've changed the name of that to Beach and Village parking lots 1 and 2. So if we can make that change to the resolution, it had nothing to do with the item before you, it's just a change in the language of the resolution.
Is that fine with the motion maker?
I think so.
Thank you.
Okay.
Quick question. On the chart you showed, was that for an expired, was that over the 2-hour time limit, or was that for an expired meter?
2 hours.
That was the mark and exceeding the 2 hours. Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Harlan?
No.
Councilmember Botor?
No.
Councilmember Bertrand?
Yes.
Councilmember Termy?
Aye.
Mayor Norton?
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. We move to item B on general government, a consideration of adoption of administrative policy to provide a process for issuance of surf school permits. Staff report, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Rudy Escalante, Chief of Police. So as most of you know, in 2008, the Council adopted Section 9.30 of the Municipal Code to regulate surf schools that operate within specific zones within the city of Capitola. And within that ordinance, a maximum of 4 surf school permits are issued each year. There were several meetings that led up to that. Historically, I was not present when that occurred, but there were several discussions that had happened. And what was designed is to regulate, for safety reasons, the amount of schools and the amount of instructor to student ratio. Also, to make sure that the instructors had proper CPR permits, that there were backgrounds that were done to conducted to make sure the instructors didn't have a criminal background, that shirts were being worn so we could properly identify them. And that had worked for some time, and we haven't had any issues for some time. And then last year, or the year before, I started to notice that there was a significant amount of interest from other vendors. People had been inquiring about how to get a surf permit. And so as I looked into it further, we found out that there was not any type of permit that had been issued. The council has on its fee schedule a $52 fee for the permit, and to the best of my knowledge, we had not been collecting it since 2008. So as I went through that process, there was actually not even a permit that had been issued, and there was not even an application that had been developed. And so with the help of staff, we developed an application. And in May of 2014, we put one together, and there were 4 holders of the permits that we went to, and they filled out the applications, and then we issued their permits. As the year expired, and I think if, well, Steve will bring that up, it'll show that there's a permit on file of one that expired December 31st, and they all expire at that end of the year. The challenge with the ordinance, and you can see it now, it's up on the screen, that is the permit that we devised and that we issued in May of 2014, and the 4 surf school permit holders were all issued one of those. The challenge is that the ordinance did not indicate a specific application process. In fact, it didn't even indicate anything about an application other than what the guidelines were to be. And the challenge is that interest has grown significantly from other vendors, both inside Capitola and outside Capitola. And so with that, as we went through the end of the year, we've received more applications than permits that we've had, or that we're allowed, or that I'm allowed to issue. And so staff got together and we put together an administrative policy so that we can help move that process a little bit more efficient, so that those people who do have an interest can at least understand what the application process is, what the appeal process is, and that it also gives staff an opportunity to revoke permits if they are issued and we're finding out that we're having an issue with a particular vendor. And so what you have in front of you tonight is a recommended policy, and if there's any questions, I'm available for those.
Questions, Chief?
I have a couple of questions. Thank you, Chief.
Yes.
we have a maximum number of students in the water at any one time as well, do we not?
That was 8 students.
So 8 students total. So even if we had 4 permit holders, it could be possible that permit holder number 4 could come to the beach with students, and if there's 8 students in the break, he has to hold back.
There's an instructor-to-student ratio.
Right.
And so they worked that out pretty well with themselves over the
Themselves.
last few years. That has worked out very well.
And in the last few years, we've had the same 4, year by year.
Yes.
And I realize there's been increased interest. How did the Capitola 4, what was their process year by year? Did they just send their money in whenever, or was it kind of loose, sort of surfer sort of rules?
Well, actually, they worked
Well, I'm not trying to say surfers are bad, but it was pretty relaxed.
They actually worked out well together. And we didn't have any issues, except the interest has grown. And now we have more local vendors that are interested, and we have more outside vendors that are interested. And so that has created a challenge for us, to where local vendors and outside vendors were conducting lessons without permits.
Did the 4 regulars who have been coming year after year, did they know this year that the rules were going to change?
No, and when I went to them and filled out the application, I did not personally, but when staff went to talk to them, they had to fill out an application. We gave them the permit, and in October, we actually met with one of our local vendors to try and discuss and develop a process so that we could put this together. And at the time, it was the desire to, not move forward on it at that point. The problem was in December, I received more applications than permits I was allowed to
First
issue.
time ever.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any questions to read?
Question, yeah, Chief. I'm reading item B of the procedure, and it says you're going to make the choice based on a competitive assessment of the applicant's past history of compliance with the regulations, the applicant's history of a successful operating surf school, and the local vendor. Looks like 3 criteria there that I can identify.
Yes.
So my question is, if we have, I'll use current situation. If we have 5 applicants and we use 4, odd man's out. So when he comes to apply next year, how is he going to be rated for successful history of a school? Or I'm trying to think how a person that's out 1 year, is there something that we can do that says there's an advantage the next year, or is he just falling into oblivion? And I don't see anything in the policy that addresses that. So
It would be date on the application that is submitted, and if it's submitted before other applications, and they didn't have a permit the previous year, we would be able then at least to have that competitive process to review it.
right, but
I think the answer to your question is we'd look comprehensively at someone's application. So we'd look comprehensively at the totality of someone's experience that they bring to the table in their surf school operations. And just because you're out 1 year doesn't mean you no longer have experience operating a surf school. But in the application process, we would look at the
you can look at
totality of their...
when he was operating, how did he perform?
Absolutely, the totality of it, yes.
That seems to be rational. My only concern is, if we get in a situation where, we just identified we've had no problems, which tells us that everybody's running a pretty good business.
Yes.
All things being equal, does the person that sits out 1 year, do you see any consideration for that? Is there a possible way to have some consideration for that, all things being equal?
Well, the challenge is going to be if we have continue to get more interest and then have people submitting applications.
That's the next, because if I go next year and we say, because let's just say next year 10 applicants come.
Because then it could be somebody else.
Could be everybody else.
That's correct.
You could have conceivably four new applicants.
Conceivably.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just have one additional question. So really, whether it's 4 or 40 applicants that come to us, you will be the ultimate decider of who gets the permits.
And we look at the competitive assessment of them
And you also surf that break, right? I just want to make sure. I want to. Okay, good.
I
okay,
have
so
on occasion.
Good. So you're warned. Okay, good.
Rudy, this is getting a little specific, but actually, we're talking about one break, right? We're talking about main break, the jetty.
Yes, the
that
toes
area
over.
So is there a
Yes.
geographical area that it's,
There is.
There is. And so if you're at Bombora, you're at if you're at the pier or something, that's a whole different ballgame. Is that correct?
That's correct. Where the surf zone is,
Yes.
that we've designated near the jetty and those
Between
points
first
right
and
there.
second, is that?
Yes.
We blackball breaks as well, depending on what's happening.
I hate to see the day when jurisdictions are determining who gets to ride or go to any break in California. That's something we don't want to look forward to. But thank you, Rita.
Thank God Sam didn't get us designated as a designated surf beach, okay?
Oh, I remember
Oh yeah,
that.
what's it called, the historical
Whatever it was, yeah.
Any other questions from council?
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm available as well.
Thank you.
Maybe back.
Okay, so let's. Is there anybody in the public who would like to address us on this issue? Please step forward.
Hello. It's only one page.
Okay.
Thanks for allowing me to speak. My name is Cliff Hodges. I'm the owner of Adventure Out. Since 2005, we've taught surf lessons here at Capitola Beach. I was here in 2008. I spoke and worked with the city in creating the ordinance that's in front of you all this evening. And I do very much agree with the chief. I believe the ordinance is in need of updating. And I'm speaking to you now on a slightly different issue to ask for your consideration in the case of my school, which for the first time in 10 years has been told that we may no longer operate in Capitola. To give you as brief and succinct of a background as possible, since 2008, the permitting process has been pretty loose. As the chief said, I was registered as a surf school in 2008. I have an email from Eric Mitchell saying you are registered as a surf school, and I paid a $52 fee, and I have that check. Every year since 2008, as lessons started to heat up and get busier for the summer, I would check in with Officer Mitchell and ask if there's anything that needed to be done or resubmitted, and I was always told, no, you're fine, everything's just continuing on as normal. I did check in regularly. That continued until last summer when I was contacted by Sergeant Daly in June and asked to submit new application materials, and I complied with that request, as I have complied with any request I've ever gotten from the city. I submitted those materials and I was reauthorized to operate as a surf school. And with that reauthorization, I did not receive any information on how or when to renew a permit. I assumed that I'd be sent renewal information when that decision was made. My business does more than just surf lessons. I permit with over a dozen other agencies, including National Park, State Park, National Forest, BLM, several other cities around the state, all of whom issue similar permits and publicly publish a renewal process. I figured I'd either receive a renewal packet from Sergeant Daly, possibly the following May or June, as it had been in 2014, or at least there'd be some kind of public notice of when to renew. To my knowledge, that never happened. In February of this year, I learned that the city had begun issuing new surf school permits, so I immediately contacted Sergeant Daly and asked to apply. At that time, I was told 4 permits have already been issued. You may not apply, but I will place you on a waiting list. So to be very clear, I requested to apply, and I was told I may not apply. There's a lot of details. I know I only have 3 minutes. I'm going to run probably 30 seconds over here. I've emailed all of you to try to explain my situation, but the thing I would like to bring to light more than anything this evening is that the change in the permitting process that occurred in 2015 was not made public. I think the proposed changes in front of you tonight are excellent. I think the chief did a great job in writing that up, and I think they're an excellent addition to the ordinance. I'm not here to tell you that I deserve a permit simply because I've been here in the past. I'm not here to tell you that I'm more entitled than anyone else to apply for a permit. I'm wholly confident in my ability to compete for a permit under these new regulations due to my history of a decade of operating a surf school. What I'm here to ask for is simply the ability to apply and be fairly considered. There was no renewal process made public this year. I think that's pretty evident given that none of the existing surf schools applied before the first of the year. Not a single piece of this new process was made public, and in my opinion, that's not how government should operate. Public contracts and permits should never be awarded based on a foot race, and that's exactly what happened this year. All I want is a chance to compete, and I sincerely plead that for the year of 2015, you amend the ordinance to allow for 5 schools, have an open application period, allow me and anyone else who's interested to be considered fairly based on their credentials, as opposed to losing out sheerly because I was the last person to find out about a secret process.
Thank you, Cliff.
Matt Arthur, I am one of the fortunate ones this year to actually gain a permit. I believe being lucky in my situation isn't the way it should be. There should be an established process, and this is only about a process that was supposed to be in place but wasn't. What you have here tonight, I think we all agree upon. It's a great process. This is what the intent of this process you're looking at tonight was supposed to be in place prior to the end of 2014. It wasn't implemented. There was no process implemented. Nothing was made public. So ultimately, I'm only here. I mean, I got a permit, but very easily I could be number 5. I could be in Cliff's shoes right here, to no fault of my own, to no fault of Cliff's. There had to have been an established process made public before you could start stamping approved or denied. All we're looking at here is just a fair process. No more, no less. You need to consider that. I've heard the ideas of 5. I know to do that you'd have to amend the ordinance, and that we may have to go down that route, but a fair deal is to allow for this to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Mr. Mayor and City Council members, thank you for putting this together. I'm Ed Guzman from the Club Ed Surf School. I've been teaching in Capitola since 1990, and it's one of my happy places to go. I love it down here. The parking thing that you guys just went through was amazing. 3 hours, thank you. I know that it's going to make it a happier beach to be at. The process that's gone on, I've been involved with from its inception with the City of Santa Cruz doing its Santa Cruz Surf School ordinance and then the Capitola ordinance. Whew, I'm one of the lucky ones too. I have an office manager that said, Ed, you got to get down here to the City of Capitola and renew the permit. That was, I think, about the 6th of January or sometime after the 1st. I was clueless. I didn't hear anything about it anywhere until my office manager said, Ed, you have to go take care of this and do it sooner than later. I am very sad that this process has gone this way, and I think that the incumbent schools that have been doing a great job should be allowed to do what they've been doing, which has been very harmonious between all the 4 schools. And I think that if there is one of the schools that is not performing properly, then their permit should be in question. And the process, I think, slipped here. I hope that we can get Adventure Out back in because they've been great partners with us. And I'm a little bit sad at this point. I hope that we can all work it out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed. Michael? Wait, I'm sorry, anybody else?
TJ?
TJ?
He's been here a long time. We should probably let him talk.
Fell asleep back there, I think.
Well, he's another surfer, Do you have socks on, TJ?
I don't have any skin in this game. Half socks, but
okay. Because I'm just taking a poll. That's right. Go ahead.
Well, I don't have skin in this game other than the fact that I was in 2008 part of the group who worked on this ordinance, and along with Cliff and Ed and Richard Schmidt were there, and then we had one other club that was there, a surf school that was there as well. And they're right. The group worked together great to work with the local guys here to create the ordinance. I thought it was a very cohesive partnership at the end. I would say, well, 2 things I want to make. One is we did discuss as a group, and I hope that Ed and Cliff remember this, is that we talked about there have to be some type of rotation. Now, when we originally were doing this, although Matt wasn't involved in those discussions at the meetings, we knew that he would be part of this, the 4 surf schools. But there was discussions about they would have to rotate in some manner. The ordinance, it was left out in the ordinance, so I have to agree that we, somehow the city, if we didn't get that in place there, we discussed what's going to happen year after year, because there was discussion. In fact, there was a fifth school that attended the meetings and was very much involved and pulled out at the end and never did do an application. So there was 5 in the very beginning. I do support the chief's, where the chief stands on trying to rewrite this ordinance to look at how we do this. I don't really have a concern about 5 schools. I think the 8 students is really what the group that the local guys were trying to get to at the time. As long as they stand by that, it's the surf schools that have to work out between them. And they have done a great job of coordinating amongst themselves. So, we have to give them credit for that. The only thing I would say is that the expiration was pretty clear on the certificates they got, but not having that ordinance and having the precedence of not really pressing forward on those dates, I think leads us to a position where we're at today, where we have, a little bit of, unhappy feelings amongst the group. But I want to applaud the city for moving forward the ordinance. I hope they stick with the ordinance the way the chief has written it, and I hope we can work out between this group here on, a compromise to make sure it works out in a fair fashion.
Thank you, TJ. Anyone else in the public like to address this? Okay, Michael?
I think what we're looking for here is a Band-Aid. I think the new ordinance is perfect. I don't think we should change anything about the number of students in the break, because that's a safety issue. I totally understand the fact that we sort of changed the process and just neglected to tell anybody. I don't think it should be a first come, first served. I think that it's right the chief makes the decision based on past performance and capabilities. So I believe that my motion on this is for this year that we amend the ordinance to 5 surf schools, let the 5th surf school in, keep it at 8 students, and then we can revisit it at the end of this year for 2016 and bring it back to the 4 and let the chief continue with this process. That is my motion.
Can we get some kind of legal direction on that, Jamie or John?
Sure. If that's your, if it's all going to be a time specific only for 2015, I could come back, and it would be an uncodified ordinance because it only applies for a specified period of time. So it wouldn't go into the Muni Code, but it would be an ordinance. So it would be adopted for publication on March 24th, finally adopted on April 8th, and then a 5th school could be permitted to operate after the ordinance goes into effect, which is 30 days after the first meeting in April, so by early May. And then by its own terms, the ordinance would be of no force in effect after December 31st, 2015, and you'd be back to the process that we have now, which is 4 surf schools with the competitive process for applying.
I'll second that motion.
So what you have in front of you today is an administrative policy, not an amendment to the ordinance, so that we'd have to come back another time for that.
No, you can adopt the policy tonight.
That's part of my motion. Is, like I said, your administrative policy is perfect. It will work wonderfully now that we all know it, and that we just need to get through this year and have the 5th regular out there and go forward. In 2016, it'll be the way it goes.
Right.
So this permit would go into effect on May what?
Well, whatever. What's the first meeting in April, Sue?
Oh, I can tell you. I have a calendar.
It's like
9th,
April
I
10th.
think.
First meeting?
The 9th, isn't it?
April
9th.
April 9th.
April 9th. So it would go into effect on May 9th.
Okay.
So are we saying 4 for next year?
Well, 5 this year because we have the 1
Right.
out, and then starting in 2016, we'll go to the policy where it's only 4, because the ordinance will automatically roll back, and the chief will follow his administrative policy, choosing the 4 out of the 5 or 50 that we get in applications.
So what you would be doing tonight would be adopting the administrative policy as written, which governs how the permits would be issued on a go-forward basis. And if I'm properly interpreting Councilmember Termini's motion, what we would do is bring back an uncodified ordinance to your next meeting, and you'd have the first reading of the ordinance to allow that 5th school for this summer only.
Is there any way we can do it without first reading, second reading, do a resolution rather than an ordinance?
No, because you have an ordinance on the books that specifies 4, And even you are bound by your own
So
ordinances.
you can't do a resolution which would override that for a short period of time?
You
or,
can't, you
know, or
can't amend
something?
an ordinance with a resolution. You can only amend an ordinance with an ordinance.
Cliff,
Nice
do you understand
try.
the timetable on this? Do you
I
understand?
understand. I guess I'll be here at 9 in the morning tomorrow for an application.
Need an application?
Don't be late, please. Come on.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor?
Aye.
So carries.
I just want to make a comment. Ed, thanks for taking care of my daughter. She was in your school, and she thoroughly enjoyed it. Yep. She had a good time that summer.
Can I have a show of hands here in the audience, please? How many people are here for the zoning code update in the audience? How many are here for the introduction to add definitions to the transitional and supportive housing? How many people are here for that? One. Who are we missing? Okay.
Those are the only two left, right?
No, it's 7 people back there that.
I know.
I'm going to start over. I'm going to start over. How many
leave.
people? Okay. Oh, they're leaving. Okay.
They're surf people.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh,
They're confused.
All right.
Surfers.
Get out there at sunrise.
Yeah.
Okay.
Get your permit
So
for
we'll
parking
stay
on
with
the
it. We'll stay with the regulator. I want to take a 5-minute break, please.
Okay.
Why?
Chocolate home?
It's in the bathroom. He's in the bathroom. I'm done with that.
Sorry.
I think you almost bought it. I told you.
You nibbled. You nibbled.
Okay, we'll continue the meeting, and we're moving to item 10C, the zoning code update, issues and options, white paper presentation. Katie?
Okay. Thank you, Mayor Norton and Council. Each of you were given a hard copy of the Issues and Options Report, the issues list, and the decision-making matrix. Tonight I'll provide you with an overview of the 3 documents and then ask for direction on the process to review. If you could please open your folders to the issues list. This spreadsheet has a blue heading as seen on the slide. The issues list was created by taking all the issues identified during the public outreach and organizing the issues into this spreadsheet. All identified zoning issues within the current code are included in this list. There was also a lot of comments made by the public that are not on this list because they're outside of the scope of the zoning ordinance update. Each issue is identified by subject, followed by comments or an explanation of the issue. The comments and the explanations are from the perspective of the public and the person who generated the comment. You will notice that all of the comments are not always in sync, and there is often disagreement between comments. The third column is how issues will be addressed. For the more straightforward, simple issues, we provide an answer there. As we work through the update, we'll be noting what section of code it was updated in. For the more complex issues, we'll have a reference to see the issue and options and the specific number. Next in your packet is the issues and options paper. The issues and options report is divided into 2 sections. The first section is the non-controversial issues. The non-controversial issues include issues such as formatting and updating definitions. An overview is provided in the report, but the specific examples are in the table. The second section is the issues that are items for public discussion. These issues are the larger issues that make up the bulk of the report. On page 3 of the document, you'll see the 18 issues in need of public discussion and direction. You can reference this page of the document as your table of contents. Next, I'll go over how the individual issues are broken down. When you review the individual issues, the issue is typically introduced with an overview, followed by stakeholder or public perspective on the issue. And if applicable, the general plan policies or actions associated with the issue are included. Next, the options are provided. The first option is always the option to maintain the code as it is today, just with clarification. And then listed below that is other options that are in line with the general plan policy and action items. The document has been created as a conversation point to start the conversation. I'd like to note that not all options are within this document. As we work through these, we look forward to hearing your ideas on other fixes that are relative to the issues that are outstanding, as you all know Capitola very well and what is appropriate for our city. And then also we've included within our options references to other cities for examples, and we've also noted their websites so you can look further into what they've adopted in their success stories. The last document in your folder is an issues and options matrix. This is simply for you to utilize as you go through to help you remember which options you're in favor of, or put your notes in there and modifications as you see fit, but just an organized place for you to look at each issue and the options, and then also any suggestions you have. It's your note keeping. If you don't want to use it, you're welcome to recycle it, but I think it'll help you in the process. And now to discuss the next steps. The current task is to review the issue and options here. The Planning Commission will review the report first and make a recommendation to your body. These meetings will follow a typical meeting protocol with presentations, discussions, and public input with a recommendation. While we work through the issues and options, the consultant will begin to draft the zoning ordinance. During our March 5th Planning Commission meeting, we asked the Commission for direction on their preference for reviewing the issues and options report. Ultimately, the Commission outlined a few workable options and asked that the City Council weigh in to ensure that both bodies utilize the same review process for the benefit of the public. The three options that the Commission said they were open to include adding to the regularly scheduled meetings, although timely. Also scheduling an additional Planning Commission meeting on the third Thursday of the month with an early start. And the third option was attending a daytime workshop. These could be on the weekends or during the weekday. There were some commissioners that requested that the meetings be limited to 4 to 5 hours because of, after that point, not being as effective, and that the issues at hand are very important to them. This next slide will show the timing related to each option. Under the first option of adding to the regularly scheduled meeting, I'd estimate that we'd be working on the issues for 12 to 18 meetings, so a year to a year and a half. The third Thursday option, we could most likely get through the 18 issues within 6 meetings, doing 3 at each meeting with an early start time and probably designating 4 hours at each meeting. The third option of workshops, we'd be looking at possibly 4 meetings. We could space them out every 2 weeks and hopefully have a recommendation to you by July under that option. So this evening I am requesting direction on your preferred review process for the issues and options. Each of you received an email from Commissioner Newman with his input on efficiency of the review. We are open to suggestions outside the 3 options listed to ensure that this process is managed effectively and efficiently. Also, Commissioner Welch is in attendance tonight if you have any specific questions for Planning Commissioner. There he is. He moved his seat. So thank you, and I'm here for questions.
Thank you, Katie.
Josh?
Yeah, in terms of, and I'd like, TJ, you want to come up and talk about this too, because I'd like to hear the perspective of planning. But how would you, maybe from both sides, I'd like to hear how you would think these proceedings would go. So in other words, if we're going to have the workshops, how would that be conducted? And if we're going to do a special PC meeting or regularly scheduled PC meetings, would there be any differences? This is an issue that's going to have long impact. So with that in mind, the long impact, I want to make sure there's sufficient review and options for the public to be involved. So I'd love to first hear, I guess, from City Planning if there's some recommendations there, and from staff also.
There's one of the great benefits of the second or third option is that with a dedicated meeting for the items to be addressed, Ben Noble would be able to come down and be there as well, and he'll be drafting the ordinance as we're working through. So for him to be able to attend more of the meetings would be a benefit to the workshops or the special Thursday night once a month meeting.
I'm going to wait till the public, because I'm ready to launch off. Oh, you're ready to go. TJ, what was the Planning Commission's discussion or your sense of what happened?
Good evening. Commissioner Newman fairly stated, I think, represented the Commission's perspective on it. So I think he did a good job there. There was some discussion about if we did it during our regular Planning Commission meetings, people may lose interest and fade off or something because it may make for a long night. And it would be nice to have special meetings just to focus on zoning, and that would be the intent. And then we had some discussion about doing the all-day meetings, and then there was some concern from some of the commissioners that, that may be too long to, focus on something that's really intense. And And as Commissioner Newman stated, you know, it's a very significant change to the city, and it's require a lot of attention. So I think too long of a meetings, and then also add them to our other Planning Commission meetings were the two concerns that the Planning Commission had. So I think they wanted to see special meetings that were shorter terms, maybe 4 hours or so. I think that fairly represents what the Commission wanted.
Special meetings.
Katie, right now the Planning Commission is doing one meeting a month, is that correct?
That's correct.
So, yeah, that's so, really in our commitment from the Planning Commission, it is 2 meetings a month. That's what it's set up to do. I'm real concerned about the public process, and in the public process, the convenience should go to the public, and the Planning Commission or the council accommodates to that. In other words, a regular scheduled evening may be the most indigenous time for meetings to take place, and especially if they're on any frequency to them that would happen. A large forum, you know, I think is a significant idea, but to do something that is an off time, that isn't public friendly, I think that we end up with the accusations that we got with the general plan update. So if the Planning Commission is scheduled for 2 meetings a month, I think maybe this at least one meeting a month should probably come into that fray. And I think that they even recommended that, if I'm not mistaken, that they take it. Okay.
No,
Are we going to call the public, or we're done with the public?
Yeah. Any member of the public would like to address us on this issue, please step forward. Okay, let's bring it back.
Well, I met with the chair, the Planning Commission chair, for a long time, and it's a broader issue than just going through this, because remember what our process is here is the Planning Commission makes recommendations, it comes back to us, we review their recommendations. I think at that time our tweaking, and it's inevitable, need to go back to the Planning Commission and then come back to us for final ratification. So this is significant. There's a lot to be done here, and it should be done in that very orderly way. I don't think that doing it over a really long period is the way to go. I was thinking more in terms of ripping the Band-Aid off really fast and devoting a week, 4 days of the Planning Commission, meeting Monday through Thursday, and take 4 issues per night and have a zoning week. Then it should come back to us at a special meeting, and we can tweak through in 1 meeting or 2 or 3, doesn't matter. But I think we need to do it week by week by week. And I think we need to wrap this up in the next 3 months. I think that should be our goal, because there's an argument for rushing through it, but there's a bigger argument for letting it languish. And we've been at meetings where we've talked about something as simple as FAR, and we stretch it over 3 meetings 2 weeks apart, and we don't really know where we are. So I believe the Planning Commission should focus on it, and whether it's 2 weeks in a row, 2 meetings a week, or four meetings straight through, then it comes to us. We look at their recommendations and comment on it and put our input in. Our comments go back to the Planning Commission. They either say, oh yeah, we understand, done, check, or by the way, these changes you made, there's a reason we did this because of this, to more or less support their position on it if we went far afield. And then it comes back to us because we have the final say. So I think we need to lay out this entire process from planning to council to planning to council and give a good timeline and just jump right in.
Mike, are you suggesting more than one meeting a week?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think it would help with the public input too, because if we let the public know that during this 2-week period there'll be 4 Planning Commission meetings to speak on the zoning, I think we'll get much better input than stretching it over months, because the public can have a short attention span. And I think that we need to get them engaged and keep them engaged and keep the discussion going, because a lot of these things are intertwined, a lot of these 12 issues, and we can't separate them too much. It has to be more holistic.
I think there's something to what you're saying. It's a little hard for me to accept that the public will come down, for 4 intense meetings in a short stretch. But one thing I could think of is recognizing that discussion is going to be highly technical. Okay? And so there's a good purpose for doing it that way. I would like to have, as part of the process, more of an open engagement with the public when it comes to city council, so that how it sits with the public, and an individual person is trying to think of how I'm going to take out a permit, what's that going to mean for my plans, and how a business person is going to think about how that's going to influence their plans. So it's not a technical thing, but it's how it sits with them in terms of what they would like to do with their property and with their place in the city of Capitola. So I don't mind going along with what you're saying. I think that's good. It'll rip the Band-Aid off. I think that's a good expression. But I
was talking about dedicated meetings, that
Yes.
this not take place in the midst of a whole agenda, that everything having to do with zoning is only zoning.
Okay, and I have no problem with that. I can support that. But when it comes back to city council, I'd like to have almost like a workshop, a time when people are notified, good notification that this is the kind of issue that's going to come up, and how's it going to sit with you, and giving a good chance for the public to respond.
I think we should bring it back to the Planning Commission and see what they're willing to do, because I don't think they're willing to spend probably 4 nights during the week, because everybody has commitments and family and a lot of things. So I don't have any recommendation about process, but process is going to be really important here. But I think it's crucial that we have joint meetings. We've been needing to do it for a long time, and we need to sit down with the Planning Commission and say, okay, folks, what do you want to do about this? What do you want to do about this? What do you want to do about that? And I think there's some key issues here. The non-conforming zoning ordinance is probably the biggest can of worms. And I really feel it's important to do it together, because we're going to be moving forward together. And I think it's really, rather than, they're acting on an application and then we act on it, I think we need to have a few workshops together so we're on the same page as much as possible. So we're moving together, we're moving forward together. So I don't know whether we want to have, I'm not really interested in really long meetings or all day Saturday or anything, but I would like to go back to them and say, okay, we have these 18 issues. Some of them are going to be fairly quick, not to you maybe, and some of them are going to be really long. So how do you want to handle it? Obviously, the other Thursday night's available for them, and I think that's appropriate, and I think that's appropriate they get paid for doing that, because they used to have 4 meetings, and they get paid so little anyway. And whatever's convenient for their schedule. If it's a couple Saturday afternoons or Saturday mornings for a couple hours, or it's a couple of those Thursday nights, we can sit around the table and look at these issues and say, look, this is what we've done in the past. This is the problem that we see. What do you see? How do you want to handle it together? And move on. Then we won't have this too much back and forth, hopefully, at the end.
Maybe we can ask staff to come back to us with a schedule if we can get a consensus that we want it to be concentrated and over a relatively short period, and with joint meetings interspersed in there. If we give that direction to staff, they can come back with a 2-month schedule to us.
Or 3 or 4. I don't even, the way things are going. This is such an important, huge issue. And I'm almost a little nervous doing it right now when all of our attention and focus is going to be on the budget. Although we're not looking at that right now. The staff is all trying to put that all together right now. But that's going to be our focus in April and May and June.
Yeah.
Absolutely, is tweaking. We're going to be focused on that. And I'm a little hesitant to take on another big issue, which this really is, maybe a little bit, and then put it off until summer or fall.
I just don't want to spread this out so that there's a big gap, but I think that I wasn't anticipating this kicking off till the budget's passed.
Oh.
Budget's passed, zoning.
Okay.
And I think that's but okay, I'm going to stop talking now.
Yeah, because when you think about the big things that we, spend our time on reviewing and so forth, the budget is, is a really big item, and I don't want to do this, two big things like that at once.
So, Mr. Mayor, my recommendation would be that the Planning Commission could probably, they don't play a role in the budget process. And so this is a good opportunity, I think, for them to focus on it in this intervening period. Regarding, the council's direction, I think that the council's direction, if ultimately the direction is to have a focused process, and that'll depend on the final motion. I think that the planning staff can work with the planning commission on their schedule to try to focus it down as much as they're available. So I think then we can come back and maybe put it on a consent calendar, just what the overall schedule would look like for this process, if that would be suitable to the council.
I'd like to weigh in before we make any decisions, okay? What I heard from TJ and Planning Commission was they would like to have, what it sounded like to me was option 2. This is a meeting of its own right, could be 3 hours or something. I appreciate the ripping off the Band-Aid, but in my mind, if we were to even deal with half of this in 3 months, that's ripping off the Band-Aid to me. I look at option 1 there, which has 2016 on it. When I saw that, I felt like I was back in the general plan mode. So that definitely is not on the table. No, that wasn't a negative thing, Rich. It just lingered. And I think that I agree. You know, we're going to be working on the budget, and it's going to pass. I think what I would really like to see is, you know, we talk about half of it, and then we reevaluate. Okay, I would like to. I like the idea of 6 meetings, 3 hours each, 18. You know, an item, an hour, and we make it work. But if we all of a sudden have our first meeting, and the ship bogs down, and we've got, you know, you mentioned the 4 meetings a week. If we bog down on day 1, then we're polarized for the rest of the week. Okay, and I think that's really aggressive. And I got to say it: if you get people to show up to meeting 1, they're going to be done after that. Nobody's coming to 4 meetings in a week. Except us. We're gluttons, okay? So I'm thinking that like 3 meetings on the 3rd Thursday. It's already a day that is on their, you know, expectation list or whatever. We know we're going to have to kick it up for this. Do the 3 meetings, see where we are, and then if it looks like we're moving along, then, you know, we can schedule double sessions, okay, and we can knock it out in another 3 months, and we can be done with this thing in 6 months. But if we find out that we're polarized, we're not working anywhere, then we're going to have to take a step back. And I really believe the key to this whole thing coming together, because you said we're going to make this recommendation, it's going to go back to us, and I don't want to play tennis with this. You know, I think what's really important is that as council people, we talk to the people on our planning commission, our designees, and see if we are anywhere near the same page of philosophy. And if we are, then maybe we can avoid that. You know, and I think it's a little challenge on our part to have a conversation with the people we designated on those topics.
I understand, and I wasn't trying to set in stone the 4 meetings a week. I was going to the extreme.
You did.
So right, so that we can come back and say to the planning commission, can you handle a couple of meetings a week on the 3rd Thursday? Or, you know, I'm trying to keep the focus going. And also, I think it's imperative because I've seen ordinance changes or zoning changes take place where the planning commission lays something out, it comes to the council, we tweak it and drop the gavel on it. Bad procedure. It needs to go back to them with a review of council's recommendations on it, and then come to us for the final gavel. I think that's where we've missed the step. Because frankly, and I think I can speak for all of us, you know, we make a lot of decisions up here, but the real meat of it with regard to zoning happens at planning commission meetings.
Which is why it's so important that we talk together about some of these things, you know, openly and candidly. At some point you're in a workshop and say, why did you approve that? Why did you guys give them, you know, that variance, or why did you approve that house when, you know, we wouldn't have done that because our values are such and such, or whatever.
And again,
you know,
joint meetings.
If there's a clash there, let's see where it is and work it out.
Right, and a couple of joint meetings within this full schedule are important to annotate so that we can come together maybe twice in the process and bounce things off of each other. You know, community room meeting.
Can we ask them to come back with what they would think would be their most
condensed
version?
That was my recommendation,
Okay.
ultimately to direct
That's
staff.
what I said.
That's right, and you said it too. I think we all said it.
The most they can handle without feeling like, because I don't want to tell them, okay, we voted that you're going to meet 4 days a week. Okay, I mean,
12 hours a day. Did we mention that?
you know, yeah.
Okay. I think the learning curve here is much bigger than everybody realizes.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I personally deal with zoning ordinances all the time. I'm lost in 50%. I go to staff to get those answers. For someone walking in, even a planning commission, I know my planning commission. I don't know them to be knowledgeable about the zoning ordinance itself, nor do I think this council is. So it's really, in many ways, it's starting with day one as we're going through this thing. So bunching things up may be a good idea, but it may not be the most productive. In other words, I would say that if you told me I had to come to one meeting a week, Mike, I think, I would feel that that's pretty huge for me. I think the Planning Commission may respond the same way, because you have a learning curve to go through in between each one of these issues. And if you want to keep the community involved in this thing, you need to come to meetings.
But not one meeting a week, a month apart. That's what I'm trying to
No.
get away from
I agree.
spreading them out too much.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Shorten the time period. But the learning curve on this and the number of issues that's brought forward by staff right here, pretty overwhelming.
Oh,
I mean,
totally.
there's
Totally.
and we all, on top of that, we're dealing with probably 4 different geographic areas, 5 different neighborhood designs. There's issues with each one of those. And when we get, for instance, if we decide to go the idea that we have individual design criteria for individual neighborhoods, we want to invite those neighborhoods to it. I mean, those are invites. So the scheduling and the amount of work that staff has to do to organize to get public input becomes pretty overwhelming if we bunch it up. But I think shortening the time period, and maybe as much as going through a 4-month period with 3 days a month or 4 days a month, I think that's about as tight as staff could really organize it, as well as us to accommodate, because we have regular counsel to perform along with us.
Mhm.
So
I don't think we should rush too, because, I view this as a work in progress.
Mhm.
It's like revising a dictionary. It's just a work. It's going to take you forever to do it. So, I agree with Ed. I think that's a really good approach. Let's start. Let's see how far we've gotten, and if we need to revise our schedule, we can sure do that, because we're not under any particular time constraint, and we just want to get it done as soon as possible. But I mean, there are so many things to discuss. What it's going to be, I think, is a little bit like the Planning Commission and the Council being a general plan committee, a little mini general plan committee where we're talking about these basic issues of the city. How high the fences and what kind of variances and historic preservation and all kinds of real important things, as you say, and complicated things. And we may want to bring in some experts or and have neighborhood meetings. I mean, there was one year when we had a neighborhood meeting in all the mobile home parks just to hear their concerns, and it was kind of a neighborhood meeting too. And we went out to Cabrillo and Turner Lane and Loma Vista and so forth, and we had a meeting at Jade Street Park, a community meeting, regular council meeting over there. I can't remember what the topics were, but it was maybe it was Jade Street or something, and we wanted the residents and the neighbors there to have a close place to come to. They didn't have to come all the way down here. So this will be the same thing, maybe.
I'd like to just add one more thing. Is just that although I do think a single meeting in direction from the beginning between the Planning Commission and the City Council would be productive, that I've sat on both sides of the fence. I've sat on the Planning Commission and the City Council, and every time we've done this, I never felt that they were productive. And one of the reasons is that the Council is the final deciding body, and when there's discussion with all of us up here, it doesn't flow freely like it should. I think that the Planning Commission may be a little bit reserved in that type of thing, but starting out as a beginning meeting and trying to get through the organizational aspects of where we're going with this thing, I think that may be a good idea to do that. There's going to be a feedback trail that's going to go back and forth for a period of time. That I think if there's a problem in that, then we can meet again if we needed to do that. But I've never felt that they were real productive when we met as a group, and I
We haven't done it in so
particularly-
long. When was the last time we did it? It was a long time ago.
The 42nd Avenue development, post that about PDs.
And how many years ago was that?
We
Year
did
and a
it
half,
about the
2.
general
Year and a half.
plan about a year and a half ago. I think was the last time.
Yeah,
and don't get me wrong, Stephen, I'm not against this meeting, but I just think that they have to have reason or productivity that comes out of it, because the Planning Commission will speak much freely with us not sitting next to them, and they'll be more apt to take their direction. They don't have to take the same direction as we do. That's
No, they don't,
the
but
catches and balances of this whole
absolutely, but it's confusing to applicants when they go to the Planning Commission and they're told yes, and they come to us and we say no, or vice versa. And so at least if we had a better understanding and a better meeting of minds, I think that would help.
Okay.
Let's never forget that we're the government and we're there to frustrate, so.
And also, my other point is that the real key, I think, here is when the draft plan comes out, this draft zoning update. That's when we need to take some real careful time to go through it, page by page, so that we get it right. This is just going to take a while. It's a big job. It's going to take a while. I'm looking forward to it. It's great. It's great to update all this stuff.
But we all agree it's such a big mess that we should take care of that. Is that true? Does everyone agree with that? Okay. All right.
No problem. Okay. So we're talking about how city planning is going to work on this, and I'm still fuzzy what's happening, and we're talking about how city council is going to interact with city planning. But I remember when this first came up, we were talking about paying a consultant, I forgot how many dollars, to do the outreach portion of this. And so I don't see that being addressed here. I think I agree with you. There's going to be a lot of learning on our part, a very steep learning curve. And think about it from the standpoint of the public. And, you know, when I responded to Mike, what I was thinking of is the fact that the public here in Capitola have to get a real sense of how these changes are going to affect their life and how these changes are going to affect the neighborhoods that they've invested in by moving into those homes and getting a 30 or 40-year mortgage, and how these changes are going to affect them in terms of all sorts of aspects of what they call Capitola and the experience of living in Capitola. So I don't know the right way to do this, but I think this is missing something here.
I can speak to that a little
Okay.
bit. So there was a public process during the general plan outreach, and then after the general plan outreach, we had a survey that went out. We also held 5 stakeholder committee meetings in which we had 5 different focus groups give us feedback. As we move through this document, the majority of the zoning code update is really going to make the zoning code easier to interpret and clarify a lot of the points that aren't really, it's open to interpretation. Our goal is not to change the rules and regulations as they stand today. In these issues and options, when you get to historic preservation, it gives us more options of how to reinforce what we already utilize, and there will be some harder discussions when it gets down to parking and mixed use and where we head on some of these issues. But I really think that the majority, we've gotten really great feedback from a lot of the public in that long list of, I think it's 12 pages long of issues. So I feel like we've got a great representation of what the issues are, and hopefully we are keeping the stakeholder committee meetings in tune about we've sent that out to them, this publication, and hopefully people continue to stay engaged throughout the process. But I feel like we have a clear understanding of the issues at this point. So, and just re-emphasizing that the update to the document really isn't about changing Capitola too much. It's really about clarifying and then working through some of the more difficult issues, but the end goal is not drastic change, because our general plan does not call for drastic change. So
What's Ben's role going to be in this, Katie?
Ben's role is hopefully to come down and help us with a few of these meetings for the larger, like the parking discussions, some of the larger items that we think will be heavily debated. And then we talk with Ben every 2 weeks. We have a standing meeting where we're working through sections of code and clarification, and really he's working away right now on the non-controversial issues and cleaning up definitions, and he constantly is in contact with myself and Rich asking for clarification of how the code is applied. So he's working away in the background right now.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Yeah, so I didn't know about stakeholder meetings. I would have loved to have attended them and had a sense of how the different people here in Capitola, members of various stakeholder groups, have felt about some of these issues. And I did go to the general plan process. It's been subsequently maligned, but I remember a lot of public participation and very active public participation, and I also remember a lot of discussion that sort of bubbled up in the community because of these issues that were brought up in the course of the general plan deliberations. So I'm a firm believer in providing forums for people to get together and discuss these issues in a broad sense. Also, I don't know that many people in Capitola know that there were these stakeholder meetings, and I don't know that many people in Capitola had the chance to participate and sort of give some response. So what I said to Mike earlier is the idea that when it comes back to City Council, that we tweak our process a little bit so that it wouldn't be, let's say, another City Council meeting and that it's like this, but it's more like a community meeting type thing next door perhaps, or J Street Park, where these issues are given some chance to air in the public rather than us to talk about what we think it should be. You know, I want the public to have that chance, because like I said, this is, and I think we all feel this way, but how we interpret it is a little bit different. This is our town, and these are the rules, the zoning regs that are going to influence what we have now. It's going to influence how people look at this city in terms of moving in here. It's going to influence, you know, someone thinking I want to buy a lot and tear down something and build my whatever mansion. It's going to influence a lot in this community, and so I want to give the residents here who like it the way it is, who like aspects of this town, a chance to weigh in on that. When I campaigned, I talked to a lot of people that weren't very happy with the way the direction of the city is going, and a lot of this is zoning driven. And this would be a chance, at least the way I look at it, for those people who I met, a chance for them to say something about it. And probably the only chance for how many years it's going to be before there's another come around.
Thank you, Josh. So what I've heard from the council here is, as direction is to reasonably expedite the process in a quick manner that also schedules to of course, a public involvement into our process. That we go back to the Planning Commission for more direction as how they would like to do their public end of it. Would anyone else like to add something to direction here?
That's enough.
Okay, that's our advice back, and so a motion to accept the report. And
motion to accept, and I suspect the staff will be coming back to us, as the city manager said, something on consent with regard to the compressed schedule and the focus and everything you've heard here tonight. Yeah. I'll second.
Okay. All that agree?
Aye.
Aye.
So carries.
Thank you.
Thanks for a great presentation, and all the work that went behind this is very obvious.
Thank you.
Okay, item next up on is item 10D, which is an ordinance amending zoning code chapter 17.03 to define supportive and transitional housing as they're required by state law. Rich?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. So this is a proposed ordinance amendment to define supportive and transitional housing. As you may recall, in our last housing element update that we completed in 2010 and certified by HCD, did have a number of action items in the housing element that needed to be completed within 2 years of adoption. Among those were zoning a site for emergency shelters, allowing single-room occupancy units, changing our code for reasonable accommodation, reevaluating our secondary dwelling units, and then adding these definitions of supportive and transitional housing. We've completed 4 of those 5 tasks. This is the last item, action item that we have yet to complete of our old housing element. In 2007, Senate Bill 2 was signed into law, and that law limits local agencies' ability to deny emergency shelters and supportive and transitional housing. It also required all cities and counties to identify one zone within their jurisdiction for a shelter and to provide the definition for supportive and transitional housing. Transitional housing is a temporary rental housing intended to facilitate the movement of homeless individuals and families to permanent housing. Supportive housing is a type of, or transitional housing is a type of supportive housing that's occupied by low-income persons, typically with disabilities, a chemical dependency, or other health problems, and those have no limit on stay. Under current state law, cities may not regulate supportive and transitional housing any more restrictively than other residential use types that are permitted in those zones. Cities may also not regulate residential group care facilities which have 6 or fewer beds. However, we are able to regulate group care facilities that have 7 or more beds through the conditional use permit. So currently in Capitola, in residential zones, we do require design permits for all new single-family homes and substantial remodels. Those regulations would remain in place for a transitional or supportive housing project, as well as the requirement for a CUP. If a transitional supportive housing project came forward with more than 7 beds, we would have authority to condition those projects and even deny it if it didn't meet our code. So all those existing requirements would remain. So the proposed ordinance amendment would essentially just bring our ordinance into conformance with state housing law. It would not further limit our ability to regulate, since it's already, for all intents and purposes, been stripped away from the city as it is. I would also complete all of our action items out of the current housing element, which is important because it allows us to qualify for the streamlined housing element update process that we're currently undergoing. Should we choose not to adopt these definitions, we wouldn't qualify for the streamlined housing element update process, which would add some time and cost to our current work. And there's also the risk that state HCD, when we submit our new housing element, could say, we're not going to certify until you add these definitions. And then with that, you have the grant triggers and everything else that they can use to compel you to do what they want you to. The Planning Commission considered this item at their last meeting. They recommended the City Council adopt the ordinance as proposed, and staff concurs with the Planning Commission recommendation. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for questions.
Questions of staff, please.
This does not mean we're required to actually set up a zone within the city where these type of dwellings are to be placed, does it?
No, it simply adds a definition to our ordinance. You know, I've talked to the city attorney, and really there's no change by adding this definition because the state already prevails their ordinances or their laws over our ordinances. So it would simply say that under state law, the transitional supportive housing can only be treated like we treat other residential use types.
Do we have any applications like that?
We have not had any applications since I've been here. I know we do have some facilities in town that operate, but we haven't seen any recently.
Okay. Okay.
Rich, if I own a house in Capitola and I want to have 35 people live in there, there's no ordinance against having me do that.
There's occupancy limits for under building and fire codes.
Okay. Okay. And so where does this fall? Does this only come into play when they actually call themselves a transitional housing or a supportive housing? In other words, if they walk in and they want to put 7 beds in there, more than likely there wouldn't be an issue, really.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if you just have a big family or your friends or whomever that live with you, there's really no limitations beyond the fire and building code for occupancy limits. But it's when you start providing those services, those support services, that you become a transitional or supportive housing.
Does this apply to like a student housing type of situation?
No, it wouldn't be student housing. The transitional housing is intended for people that are in the risk of going homeless or are homeless, to put them into a situation where they can transition and hopefully reacquire home ownership or a place to live. The supportive housing, typically, you have some kind of support systems for chemical dependency, mental illness, things of that nature.
Would this only apply to R1 or multiple?
It would be any residential zoning.
Any residential.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
The gentleman that wants to speak.
Any member of the public who would like to address us on this issue, please step forward. We don't see any. Back to council for direction.
Move approval?
Second.
The motion is second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we move to item 10E, introduction of an ordinance amending the Capitola Municipal Code, section 2.04.140 regarding council members placing an item on the city council agenda. And I think we covered this once before, but we're going back to it. Is that right, Jamie? Is that?
This is a follow-up from the workshop that we held
Okay.
several weeks ago, and so the follow-up from the workshop was that council indicated that any member should be able to place an item on the agenda. It should just be done at an open meeting. So this was clarifying that in the code. So it's just codifying the direction we received that night.
Housekeeping.
Housekeeping? Member of the public would like to address us? Seeing none, back to council.
Well, I just had an issue here. I talked to you, Jamie, about this, and I don't know what the city council feels about this, but anyone can put an item who's in the council here with the agreement of the rest of the council members, and basically chair of commission, stuff like that. Same thing, because the commission members would be agreeable about that. But being that the mayor is the head of the city, I think that any item that the city manager puts on should also be done in concert or consulting with the mayor, the present mayor. So I'd like to change, I guess, A to the city manager and consulting with the mayor.
So would you read the whole sentence?
Yeah, I need to hear that whole thing.
Yeah. So I guess let's use the line from above. With the condition that the proposed agenda item be requested, be placed on the agenda with consultation with the mayor.
With the mayor?
The mayor.
Why?
Why? Because he's the head of the city. He's our,
Right, but they don't, I know, but they don't have any authority.
Yeah,
I didn't say he had authority or not, but.
Well, it's giving him or her authority that, we don't really have in the city.
I think that it hamstrings the city manager because there are many, many things that go on this agenda that we don't hear about until we see the packet come out, and it's because it's housekeeping or it's municipal or there are so many things. And the mayor, while great and powerful, and we love him, certainly has a full-time job as well. And some of the minutia that goes on there, a city manager should just be able to put it on.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts.
Well, it is a consultation between the city manager and the mayor when the agenda is made up.
Right.
It is,
Well,
that's there.
Right, that's the procedure, is
Yeah.
the preparation
So
of the
is
agenda.
that part of this?
Yeah, that is
Yeah.
part.
Okay.
Yeah,
so-
that's how it works, mayor and the city.
Yeah.
Motion to adopt ordinance.
Okay, second.
One quick question, quick clarification here is that it requires that a council member bring it in a previous meeting, at least a previous meeting before, and brings the issue up in front of the rest of the council.
Right.
Hopefully they'll get a reading
Would there
as
be
to
an-
whether it's going to get close to
And
flying or
it
not.
Doesn't need a second.
It doesn't need a second, doesn't
No.
need consensus.
Would
or
there be an
anything?
appropriate time that we should make such motions on our given?
Well, I'm going to do it right now.
No, I think that it's
I'll show
more,
you.
I think it's more of a forewarning.
But, I mean, in any one of the outlined areas, should we say that if we're going to do said motion?
Oral communications is oral communications.
Doesn't matter. In oral communications, when we usually do it, it's been our custom to do it then. I think we asked at the workshop that
Okay.
it be put in the ordinance.
We actually have two more oral communications.
Barring
We
the
have
one
one
you're
at the
going to
beginning
make
of the meeting, we
now,
have
we'll
one at the
normally
end.
do it at oral communication.
Or if I forget, then I'll do it now.
You can do oral communications works at the beginning of the agenda and at the end, both.
Okay.
So.
Do it at the end when no one's listening. Oh.
So,
Are
do
we
we
at
have
oral
a call for the
communications
vote?
then?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So carries.
We don't need a roll call.
You're just kidding.
No, I said we don't need a roll call, so sometimes we do.
Oh, okay, that's good.
were you going to make?
Oral communications?
We amended an ordinance, so we had to vote on it. Yeah. Okay.
Oral communications?
Yes, please, Steph.
Okay. I've been asked by a constituent to have the council consider supporting California Assembly Bill 700, the California Disclose Act, which has to do with disclosing the backers of political ads. So I'll get some more information about this, and I'm not sure if I'll put it on the agenda, but I'll develop a little information about that and see if the council wants to consider endorsing it at some point.
Sounds good, Stephanie. Thank you.
Come back to us with that.
Yes.
Okay. Any other oral communications from the council? We close the evening. Remember, 25 miles an hour in Capitola. If you get stuck behind me, you're going to drive 25 miles an hour.
or riding with you.
Or
You're
riding
going
with
20
me.
miles an hour.
You would go the same speed I am.
Yes, I.
You know,